Hello guys and gals, and welcome to another episode of Unique Items. Today we're going to be knocking out another one of the Amazon-only spears, and this is the Stoneraven. The Stoneraven is an odd one, but it's definitely a nice one, especially if you're going to be a spears on. And there's a couple reasons why you might look at this particular one versus maybe some other options that you might have your hands on. The Stoneraven is obviously already elite, so we cannot upgrade it. It does have 247 to 361 damage, which isn't the most amazing. We do have 142 dexterity requirement, 114 strength requirement, and level 64. This particular spear is really low on durability, just like all spears, and you will find that to be an issue with only 28 durability. It has normal attack speed and no increased attack speed, which is a bit of a downside, and you may want to socket it and put a shale rune in there to speed it up a little bit. It's +3 javelin and spear skills, which is definitely nice, but not as good as the +4 javelin and spear skills from the Lycander's Flank we were looking at last episode. And it has 280% enhanced damage, but it does vary by quite a bit, by 50%, so 230 to 280%. We also get a very nice magic damage effect, and as I've said in previous videos, magic damage is not really something that most monsters have resistance to. In fact, most monsters are at 0% magical resistance, which means that you can rank magic damage as much higher than something like elemental damage. If you had, say, 101 to 187 fire damage on this, it would be pathetic in comparison to 101 to 187 magic damage. In fact, I would generally recommend that you rank magic damage as about 3 times the effectiveness of elemental damage, unless you happen to be like a cold sorceress or something using max negative cold mastery, or something like that. If you are capable of bringing a monster's resistance down to negative 100%, then in that case, yes, the magic damage does not have as good of an effectiveness. But for most characters who do not possess those talents, magic damage is generally about 3 times more effective than regular elemental damage. We also have a very nice bonus to defense on here, which means it just gives us a flat 600 defense, which, although Lycander's Flank did give us a 20% defense bonus, this is giving us a rather large amount of flat defense. The problem is, though, is that this does roll between 400 and 600 on that defense, so we can end up with a relatively low defense number. And I think you're already starting to get the picture that Stoneraven has a lot of rolls and can roll very poorly. We also have an all resistances on here of 50, which also rolls 30 to 50. And I also forgot to mention that the +3 javelin and spear skills also rolls between 1 to 3. So this is one of those strange items that when you find it, more often than not, you find it in a very poor condition. Like, say, the first time you find one, it might be like +1 javelin and spear with like 30 all res and 240% ED or something with like 440 defense, and you look at it and you're like, that's not really very good. And that unfortunately is one of the big issues with this particular spear, is that more often than not when you find it, it's kind of garbage. However, in its perfect state, with the +3 javelin and spear, with the all resistances of 50, with the 600 defense and the 280% ED, it's actually a surprisingly good weapon. Now, you can find this in 2 forms. You can find it in the regular form, and you can also find it in the ethereal form, which has 368 damage to 539. It has 132 dexterity and 104 strength requirement, as well as level 64. Now, if you were going to use the Stoneraven Matriarchal Spear, it would have to be Azaded, which is unfortunate, and that is also going to raise the level requirement by quite a bit. In my opinion, the Stoneraven fits a very interesting niche. As I've talked about in the previous video, when you choose to use a spear, you are specifically choosing not to use a shield. One of the main things that a shield gives you is all resistances. In fact, by using a spear, you are basically saying, I'm giving up the defense and the resistances and the block chance that this shield would give me. The Stoneraven seems to be the answer to this question of, like, why should I give up my shield? Because what they're doing is they're giving you the defense that you would lose from having the shield on. They're giving you the resistances that you would lose from having the shield on. And they're giving you some additional bonus effects. My main issue with this is that the damage on this spear is not really high enough to warrant like the loss of having any other kind of special effects. Like there's no lifesteal, there's no crushing blow, there's no open wounds, there's no deadly strike. There's nothing on it. No mana steal, no lifesteal. No like proc curses, no proc effects, no. It's a very bland item, which does do well for what it's designed, but I feel like it could be more. And if it was more, it would have more use, I feel like, with players. But let's talk about what it could potentially be used for as a Zon. So when you get into Nightmare and Hell difficulty, obviously the negative resistances really start to hit you hard, and the lack of a shield with any kind of resistances on it can be very devastating. So you may find yourself in a situation where you are playing either a melee or a lightning spear Zon that could utilize this spear. Now the problem is that the melee version doesn't really have enough damage to really be quite useful. It's also not very fast either, which is also part of its issue. It really, really could use a little bit of increased attack speed, and it just doesn't have it. But you don't need physical damage for a charge strike or a lightning strike Zon. And having a defensive item like this, something that will increase your resistances, something that will make it a little bit easier for you to get in there and apply your damage, is certainly not a downside. So I feel like this spear was more kind of pointed at a lightning Zon than it was ever pointed at a melee, like physical damage Zon. So if you happen to be a charge strike or a lightning strike Amazon or a combination of both, which usually it does end up being a combination of both, this could be a pretty interesting spear for you, and I would probably recommend socketing it with a Shale Rune or a 15% IAS Jewel with some other nice effects. Just simply because it's not really fast enough, and with the lightning tree, you definitely want something fast. You want a faster weapon in general, because lightning damage is not really about how much damage the spear does, which is the reason why I recommend using it. It's about how fast you can apply that damage. And having this particular spear would definitely make you tankier while you're trying to apply your damage, but if you can get the speed of it up high enough to make it useful. Alternatively, though, you could just simply be using something like a Titan's Revenge with like a Monarch shield over here, and you could have pretty decent effect as well. I mean, there is going to be a little bit of a physical damage aspect to this, as well as the magical damage, which is on the item, but definitely think about Stoneraven as a very defensive option. If you were, for instance, a Spear Zon who had a primary weapon, I'm not really sure what your primary weapon would be, Stoneraven could be an interesting one to have on your offhand, just simply to swap to, so you could get the extra defense, the extra resistances, maybe in a situation where things are getting a little bit too rough. You could also use the all resistances to kind of protect you, overprotect you essentially, from resistance issues. Like, for instance, maybe if you were going in to fight Uber Mephisto, it could be mildly useful to help protect you from the Conviction aura, but not really sure exactly how well that would work out for you without a shield. Amazons are definitely interesting. I actually have killed the Ubers on a Spear Zon before. It was a little bit difficult, but I did pull it off. And that was just, playing around with ideas and trying to get it to work. All in all, Stoneraven is an interesting one that I feel like falls short of the mark just simply because of all the variables. I mean, we have the enhanced damage variable, we have the defense variable, we have the all resistances variable, and then also the plus to skill variable. So we're looking at 4 different variables to find this in a good enough shape that it would be worthy of, say, sacrificing a Zod rune for the ethereal version. Let's take a look on Silo's Pen, and let's have a look and see where we could potentially find this item, if you wanted to try and hunt one down. Bink, bink. Alright, so let's take a look at bosses. This is a rather high-level item, so we're going to say 400% magic find. I feel like that's fair. If you're hunting for any kind of end game best in slot piece of equipment, or end game like high level piece of equipment, generally you're going to have a decent amount of magic find while doing so. So it looks like Mephisto in Hell seems to be the best probability here. Let me just double check that. Yeah. So Mephisto in Hell is definitely the best possibility at 1 in 1,076, and then Diablo in Hell at 1 in 1,113. Now, between the two, I definitely find Diablo to be easier to farm, but if you are on single player or you've got map hack, Mephisto can definitely be quicker because you don't have to pop the seals. Again, this is a argument between basically, can I get to Mephisto faster than I can get to Diablo? Well, Diablo is so easy to get to, and all you have to do is kill the seal bearers, that a lot of the times Diablo ends up being the faster farm to Mephisto, unless you have some sort of ace up your sleeve, like you're able to find Mephisto, like that every single time. It's always been my experience that Mephisto is not the easier farm, just simply because you have to find him, and it's not always easy to find him. Sometimes it's easy. And if you're on single player, you can get one of those easy maps and you can keep it, and you can just farm him over and over again in single player. Or on multiplayer, if you're using map hack, you can find him over and over again too. But every time I have tried to farm Mephisto or Diablo, Diablo has always been the quicker of the two, unless I got super duper lucky and just happened to like stumble across Durance of Fate level 3 very, very fast. And this is using the tricks, the like waypoint tricks and stuff like that. It's not always as straightforward of Mephisto as I would like it to be. And it's not, this video is not about Mephisto. That could be a whole video in itself, of how to farm Mephisto video. That could be fun. Let's take a look at super uniques. And it looks like Neelathak has a pretty good chance, and the Cow King has a pretty good chance. Honestly, the Cow King is a pretty easy farm too. 1 in 5,265. And Neelathak is a pretty easy farm as well, if you have a method to deal with his corpse explosion. But if you take a look, I actually have a video up on how to farm Neelathak, how to find him really easy. Like, it's so easy that I would definitely say he's way easier to farm than Mephisto and Diablo, just simply because if you follow my method, you can find Neelathak every single time without fail. As always, I do appreciate you guys and gals watching my videos, even when we are talking about a raven made out of stone. And as always, keep watching.